daddy was, well, Mother and Daddy both were good cooks. Mother was a fancy cook. She went to the newspaper or cookbook and she found some glorified recipe and made all this weird looking stuff. And sometimes it was tasty and sometimes it wasn't. Daddy was kind of a dump it cook. He wanted to make some cookies. He'd get him an egg and some sugar and stuff. And I even saw the time where he took kind of stale crackers and he'd smush them up and put them in and end up making a cookie out of them or something. So, and his great-grandmother, my great-grandmother that was his grandmother, he lived with her for a number of years when he was young, and she's the one that kept me in the afternoons after school when I was elementary age. And she liked to cook, and of course she cooked on a wood stove, but Daddy copied a lot of her recipes and instilled my love of desserts and pies, probably. There was a restaurant in town called the Old Hickory, and we ate there once or twice a week, probably. They had barbecue, and so I always got a barbecued sandwich, and they always had good pies. They'd have coconut pie and chocolate pie and all those things, and so that's where my love of pie came from. My favorite? I don't know. I like all kinds. Coconut is one of my favorites. Lemon icebox pie is a favorite. Chocolate's a favorite. Pecan is a favorite. Just any kind of pie. As long as it's good and got sugar in it. Grandma Clifton, my mother's mother, she made a lot of pies too, so I remember that. It's funny, I can remember Mother's mother cooking. I can't remember my daddy's mother ever cooking anything. So I don't know where that came from. Well, hello, everybody. Hello, world. Brian Taylor, I don't like doing this, but I'm doing it just because you asked. I'm getting ready to make a chocolate pie, your favorite pie. Can you see this? This recipe came from a Mrs. Florence Morgan in Durham, North Carolina, back in probably the early 1960s, before you were even a gleam in our eyes. We went to her house and ate dinner, and I loved her pie, and I asked for her recipe.
What year is this?
This now or then?
Yeah.
Early 1960s. I don't know the exact date. I don't have it on here. Probably about 1963. I think it was maybe even before Leanne was born.
And you have to correct yourself. It is the.
Okay, it's the chocolate pie, I guess. Mrs. Morgan, I don't remember you anymore. I guess you're probably dead and gone, but thank you anyway. I appreciate it. All right, there are three things we need to talk about. One is the eggs. This recipe calls for 3 egg yolks. And according to my friend who lived here, she advised that the only way to have good meringue is to have your egg whites to be room temperature. So I'm going to put the egg whites, separate them into one boiler, one pot pan, and put the other one in the second pan. I had to make sure it didn't have any yolk in it, any shell. And your father would tell you that I should always clean up behind myself. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I wait till the end, and sometimes I do it while I'm working on the recipe. Okay. I'll have to wash my hands a second here. I can't work with sticky hands. Okay. So the egg whites will just sit over to the side while I'm working on the rest of it. All right, another key to this pie is that you take your dry ingredients and mix them together before you do anything else, before you add them to the other part. So I need to get 4 tablespoons of cocoa, which is the only brand there is. One, 2, 3, 4, and a splash on the counter. Okay, and then a cup of sugar, which is here, and I'm walking over to the sugar thingy here. And you mix that in with the cocoa. Actually, I guess I should use this. And just mix this up real good so it's blended and it's not really separated. Okay. All right, I also need to put a pinch of salt. And what is a pinch of salt? A pinch of salt. So I'm putting it into my hand and pinching an amount. There it is. All right, this recipe also calls for 2 tablespoons of flour, and that's plain flour, not self-rising. If I was a professional cook, this would already be measured out for me, so I wouldn't have to stop and interrupt myself doing that. So we want to get all that together so nothing is separated. Okay, next I'm going to work on the eggs and the other mixture. I guess I think I'll use another one of these. Just mixing up the eggs. All right, I need 3 tablespoons of butter. Well, wouldn't you know? I have to go to the frozen section and find my butter. All right, this has for 3 tablespoons of melted butter. And since the butter's got the little markings on there, we'll just know exactly how much 3 is. So, now, I'm also going to put this into a little dish and melt it in the microwave since it just came out of the freezer. It won't hurt anything to do that. waiting for the butter to melt. And since it was frozen, it's taking a little longer. All right, and I'm going to put the butter into the egg mixture. Never hurts to mix well. All right. Now I need to add a teaspoon of vanilla. And it calls for a cup of milk. I have a little bit of heavy whipping cream milk, so I'm going to start with that. That just adds richness to the pie. And I'll complete it with whole milk. It's nice and blended. I'll now put all of this liquid into the dry ingredients, the sugar, flour, and cocoa. And then you just stir. You want to stir and stir and stir until everything is really blended well. As you mix it, make sure all the little dry pieces of the chocolate or the flour or whatever is all blended in. If you don't do these ingredients separately, the cocoa will tend to sit up on top of the pie shell. All right, now you gotta cook it. So I'm putting it into a pie shell, which I bought. I don't make pie shells. And I like these Pampered Chef spatulas because they really clean neatly in a pan. And I should have pre-cooked my oven to 325. And I forgot to do that when we started. Okay, this original recipe says that you bake it for 45 minutes. However, all these years that I've made it, I've discovered it takes about an hour. So what you do is you just set the timer for 45, and then when you check it, it's still jiggly and not firm, you know it didn't cook it long enough. And after the pie is cooked, you take the egg whites and make meringue and cook that. All right. Okay, I've set the timer for 45 minutes, which is what the recipe calls for. But usually it takes longer. So I'm going to show you how to decide. Pull out the pie. Okay, you see on the toothpicks it looks sticky, and that means it's not done all the way through. So it's not jiggly, but it's still moist in the middle. So I'm going to put it back in. I'm going to cook it for 15 more minutes. Okay, chocolate pie, I cooked an additional 15 minutes. And as you can see from the pie, it's kind of cracked on top, which means it's good and done. Crack won't hurt the flavor. And I'm just gonna take it out and sit it on top of the stove. Come look at the meringue. There's just 3 egg yolks, egg whites in there. And if you have a hand beater, you can just beat them up like this and just that, or you can use an electric mixer, whichever you have. And you just want to stir them until they get white and they get fluffy and they get kind of stiff. And then you put 2 teaspoons of sugar for each egg white. So there's 3 egg whites in there, so you put 6 teaspoons of sugar, and it'll get all frothy and it'll fill up the bowl. Then you just put it on top of the chocolate pie, put it back in the oven and bake it for about 5 or maybe 10 minutes till it gets brown. You have to watch it because it'll get too brown too quickly if you're not careful. Enjoy. Good pies.
What other pies do you have you want to talk about?
Oh, I have lots of, well, another family favorite is the coconut, which was my mother's recipe that she made for my granddaddy, my daddy, your granddaddy. And the first time she made it for him was the night he asked her to marry him, so she always said the pie was what did the trick. I have to go through my recipe book. I have all kinds of recipes from friends and family, and I kind of get stuck making the same ones because those are the ones I enjoy. Lemon ice box, lemon meringue, coconut pie, like I said, my mother's.
Pecan?
Oh yeah, pecan. And I have a good recipe for that, which is real simple, just sugar and Karo syrup, vanilla, and eggs and pecans. It's very good. Kind of a no-fail dessert. You're welcome anytime you want to go through my recipe book and just take pictures of all the recipes. Patty's Pies. In fact, my daddy wanted to have a pie shop when he was young, and he never carried through with it, but he always loved pie. That was one of his favorite foods to eat. And so he was going to call it the pie shop. So maybe we both should have done it at some point in time. Patty's Pies. I'm Patty West Taylor, and that's how we do it in the Nashville Loop.